continue about authentication authorization. Firstly, let's recap. In the previous session, we understood about wrapper component. When we have some common logic that needs to be applied for different routes, then we can wrap it using the wrapper component, right? So then we also started integrating the APIs. So we started with get all products API. In today's session, we are going to integrate another API, which is get exclusive prime deals. We are also going to look into the possible views of the API call. So there's success view, failure view, and loading view. We'll see how to handle the various views. Okay, so to set the code playground for today's session, you need to run this, then run npm install, then the dependencies will get installed, then run npm start, and you'll be able to see an output in this manner. Okay, there's home route, there's products route, and in the products route, you can see the list of products. So the reason is we already have integrated the get products API, right? So now we are going to integrate another API, which is get exclusive prime deals. Okay, let's understand about this API call. Okay, so for our e-commerce website, okay, there are two different types of users, prime users and non-prime users. So just like how in Amazon we have prime users and non-prime users, right? Similarly, for our e-commerce website also we have prime users and non-prime users. So for prime users, we have some exclusive prime deals that will be available, whereas in the non-prime users case, so that's such exclusive prime deals are not available. So you can see that for prime users, there are exclusive prime deals there on the top, whereas in case of non-prime users, there's just a poster saying get exclusive deals. Okay, so that's the difference. So prime users will have exclusive prime deals. The non-prime users will not be having that, whereas the all products are common for prime and non-prime users. Okay, now let's have a look at the products route. So this is the products route. So in which we have the prime deals section on the top. Okay, and then there's all products section, which we already have looked into in the previous session. Okay, so now in today's session, we'll focus on prime deals section. Okay, clear? So now let's have a look at the products component. So in the products component, you can see on the top we have the header, and then we have all products section. Now we want to integrate the prime deals section into this. Okay, already in the initial code available to you, we have provided the prime deals section component. Okay, so there you can see that in the state we have the prime deals, and also we have written the function for the API call. Okay, get prime deals, where we are making the API call and we are fetching the data. Okay, so this is already available for you in the initial code. Okay, so now let's understand more about this get prime deals API. Okay, so using this API, we are fetching the prime deals. Okay, so since we are retrieving data, it's get. Okay, and coming to the URL, it is apis.ccbp.in/prime deals. Okay, now, so here for the get prime deals API, only the prime users will be able to get the prime deals list, right? So we have to authorize whether the user is a prime user or not on the server side. So for that, in the HTTP request, we need to send the authorization header. Only then on the server side, we will be able to authenticate, right? So it's important that we send the authorization header. Only then we will get a prime deals list as the response. Okay, clear? So we have to send the authorization header in the HTTP request. Okay, now let's have a look at the initial code that is available to us. So here you can see the initial code. So this is the products component, so in which we have the header, okay, and then there is all products section. Now to this, we want to integrate the prime deals section. As I mentioned, the prime deals section is already available for us in the initial code, so you can have a look at it. So this is the prime deals section component. So in the state, we have the prime deals, okay. So coming to the component did you can see here we are making the API call. Okay, so we are getting the JWT token, API URL, we are adding the authorization header, right? And then you can see that we are making the API call here. Okay, and we got a response. Okay, so if the response is a success, if the response.ok is true, okay, that is if the API call is a success, right? So then we are getting the data, we are converting the camel case and snake case, okay, and finally we have the prime deals list with us, right? So that we are updating it in the state. So if you remember, in the state we have the prime deals. Okay, so we are updating the prime deals. Okay, so since the state is updated, then what will happen? The render method will be called. So here we have the render method. So in this, we are rendering the prime deals list. So let's just go to that method. So here you can see we have render prime deals list, in which we are accessing the prime deals and we are displaying the prime deals. Okay, you can see that there. Okay, clear? So what we are doing here, we are making the API call, we are fetching the prime deals, right? And then we are updating the state with the prime deals that we got from the API call. Then in the render method, we are displaying the prime deals in the UI, right? So this is the prime deals section that is already available for you, okay, in the initial code. Okay, the next step would be integrating this prime deal section into the products component. Okay, so let's do that. So we already have the entire component ready with us. We just need to integrate. Okay, so for that, firstly, let's import. So import prime deals section. It's deals. Okay, so prime deal section from / prime deal section. Okay, so we got this prime deal section. Now, so first the prime deal section should be there, then the all product section. So let's add that here. Okay, so done. We have integrated the prime deal section. Now let's have a look at the output. Okay, so I already have logged in as a prime user. Okay, so that's the reason you can see that I got the exclusive prime deals. After that, I have all products. Okay, you can see it there. I already have logged in as a prime user. That's the reason I'm able to see this. Okay, so we are done integrating the prime deals section into our products component. Okay, so we are done with this step. We have seen the render prime deals list using which we are displaying the prime deals. Okay, and then we have integrated into the products component and we were able to look into this output, right? If you log in as a prime user, you'll be able to have a look at this. So this is clear, right? Okay. So here what happened? So the API call was a success. So we have displayed exclusive prime deals. Okay. So that list of exclusive prime deals, okay, that is the success view. Okay. So when it comes to API call, okay, the API could also be a failure, right? So in such scenarios, we want to display a failure view, and you can see there. Okay, so there's a poster like thing mentioning get exclusive deals. So if the get prime deals API fails, then we want to display this failure view. Okay, now if the API call is in progress, okay, we have made the API call, we still have to get a response. So when the API call is in progress, so we want to display a loading view. There you can see there are 3 dots, right? We want to display that loading view. Okay, so you can see that when it comes to the API call, there are 3 different statuses, right? One is success, another one is failure, another one is in progress. So based on the status of the API call, the corresponding view is changing, right? You can see when it is success, we have a different view. When it is a failure, we have a different view. And in case it is in progress, we have a different view, right? So based on the status of the API call, the view is varying, right? That is very, very clear. We already got a brief understanding about the success view. Now let's also get a brief understanding about the failure view and also the loading view. Okay. So regarding the failure view, already a method is available for you in which we are displaying that poster. Okay, there you can see exclusive deals banner. We are displaying that. Okay, so to have a look at how this failure view looks, what we'll do is in the render method, we will return this dot render prime deals failure view. Previously, we were displaying the prime deals list, right? Now let's have a look at the failure view. Okay, this dot render prime deals failure view. We are calling this method, which will give as an output like this. Okay, there you can see get exclusive deals, a banner like that. Okay, let's have a look at how the failure view looks. Okay, so here in the prime deals, so previously we were displaying the success view. Now let's also have a look at when the API call fails, then how it should look. Okay, so we already have a method for that, render prime deals failure view. So in that method we are displaying the banner. Okay, so let's have a look at that output. So here you can see now, right? So when the API call fails, we want this particular view. Okay, there you can see, right? This particular view. So when the API call is a success, right? So render prime deals list. Okay, so when the API call is success, we want this particular view. And when the API call is a failure, we have seen previously the view that we want, right? So you can see this is the view that we want. Okay, clear? So we got a brief understanding about the success view and the failure view. Now let's also get a brief understanding about the loading view. That is when the API call is in progress, we want to display a loader. Okay, so there's already a method available for it, render loading view, in which we are displaying the loader. We also have seen about this loader, right? Using the third-party package React Loader Spinner, we can display loaders. Okay, there you can see an example of it. So in the render loading view function, so we are displaying the loader, right? Okay, so now to have a view about how will it look, so in the render method, let's return the render loading view. Okay, let's call this and return. Okay, so let's do that. So here instead of failure, now let's have a look at the loading view. Okay, so in the loading view, you can see that we are displaying a loader with the type 3 dots and all. Okay, so here you can see this is the loading view. Okay, when the API call is in progress, we want to display this view. Okay, so far we got a brief understanding about the various views that we want to achieve, right? Okay. So when the API call is a success, right? So we want to display the exclusive prime deals. That is the success view. And when the API call is a failure, we have seen the failure view, right? So you can see that a poster like that. And when the API call is in progress, we want to display the loading view. So we have independently seen that how each of these view looks, right? But based on the API call status, we have to display this view, right? So far what we have done in the render method, we have displayed success view, then we have displayed failure view, then we have tried out the loading view like this, right? But based on the API call status, we have to display these views, right? So let's see how to do that. So starting with the success view. Okay, so here, as we understood, the API call status is changing over the time, right? So it could be a success, it could be in progress, it could be a failure, like this, right? So API call status is changing over the time. So when some data is changing over the time, okay, what do we have to do? We have to maintain that data in the state. So that's the reason here we are maintaining the API status in the state. Okay, there you can see API status. We have initialized it with an empty string. Okay. So now, when the API call is a success, we want to update it as success. Okay, there you can see we are updating the state where the API status is success. Okay, so now when the API status is a success, okay, while rendering, we have to display the success view, right? So for that, we'll make use of the switch. So based on the API status in the state, so appropriately we'll display the view. In case of success, the success view. In case of failure, the failure view. In case of in progress, the loading view. Okay, so let's do these steps. We'll start with the success. Okay, there you can see, right? So in the render method, okay, so we are accessing the API status from the state, okay, and then so using the switch, if it's a success, then we are calling the render prime deals list, which is actually displaying the success view, right? Okay, let's do this step. So now we understood that, so there are three different views. So we have seen how each of the view looks, but based on the API call status, we have to display either of these views, right? So for that, in the render method, so we have to access this API status and display accordingly. So firstly, in the state, I have to maintain the API status, right? So the reason is it's changing over the time, so we'll maintain it in the state, okay? And after the API call, okay, so if the API call is a success, so response.ok is equal to true. So it means that the API call is a success, right? So we'll update the state. So you can see in the set state, I'm writing the API status as success. Okay, clear? So now what I'll do is, so I'll access this API status, and based on that, I'll display the success view. Okay, when the API status is a success, only then I'll display the success view. Okay, so for that, in the render method, so instead of this, what do I have to do? So firstly, I have to access the API status from the state. So this dot state. So I got the API status. So now switch of API status. So here case. So firstly, we are talking about success. So I'm going to handle that case. Okay, in that case, what do we have to do? So I have to render the prime deals list, right? That's the success view of ours. Okay, so I've written that here. Okay, so I'll also write the default case, so where I'm going to return the null. Okay, clear? So when the API call is a success, only then we are going to list the prime deals. Okay, so now let's go here. Okay, and then you can see that we got the exclusive prime deals because I have logged in as a prime user. Okay, so this part is clear, right? Okay, so here there's one point to note. Okay, so here you can see we are using the success, that string, right? If you remember, we have used the same string somewhere else. Where did we do it? So when we are updating the state, okay, when the API call was a success and updating the state, even then we have made use of the same string, right? Let me show it to you. So here you can see this is a string. Okay, again, let's just go to the API call. Okay, here you can see again we have made use of the same string, and both are referring to the same thing. Okay, that is the API status, right? So here having the same type of string written multiple times is actually not a best practice. Okay, because see here you might have written success, here you might have written successful, right? So in this manner, so there are very high chances of making mistakes here, like spelling mistake, or it could be some other mistake. So there's success somewhere, it's successful, like this, right? There's a very high chance for it. Okay, so it's not a good practice of the same string being repeated multiple times, which intends the same thing, right? So both are referring to the API status. So writing it multiple times is not suggestible. Okay, it's actually a duplicacy, right? So it's generally avoided. So in the industry, it's not suggested to write it in this manner. So let's see how we can avoid this and make it a better piece of code. Okay, so here, as we understood, using the same string at multiple places is actually error prone. It'll cause many errors. Later, you have to debug a lot. So to avoid such errors, there are a few best practices that we follow. So here, in this case, the best practice is maintaining a constants for this API status. Okay, so both the strings are referring to the same thing, that is the API status, right? So for that, what we can do is we can write API status constants. Okay, we can maintain it at one place. There you can see constant API status constants. Okay, and then there you can see for success we have written a string, and wherever we want to make use of the string, we can directly use this constant. Okay, there you can see, like in switch case we want to make use of it, so I have directly written this as API status constants dot success, right? So using constants will reduce the errors, okay, and it will be more readable also to understand, okay, this success string is referring to API status, okay, so it will be more readable. At the same time, the error prone will be very, very less. It will be error free, okay, so it's the best practice that we generally follow, okay. Similarly, another place where we are making use of this string is while we are updating the state during the API call. So there you can see we have appropriately replaced it with API status constant dot success, okay. So let's do this step. Okay, so as we understood, so the best practice is maintaining the constants. So I'm writing API status constants. Okay, so I've written it outside this. Generally, we maintain the constants outside of the component. Okay, so here, so the first one is success that we are dealing with. So this is the string. So now, so this is one place where we are accessing it. So let's replace it with this. Okay, so now it's very, very clear, right? So we are making use of API status success. Similarly, in this case also. So if you want to, let's say, later on change it as successful or something, so you just need to change it single place, right? But whereas in the previous scenario, you have to change it at 2 places, or if you use it in some other place, and many more like this, right? But here, it's just at one single place where you have to make a change. So this is actually a best practice that we follow in the industry. Okay, clear? So we have understood one best practice, right? Okay, so with this, we were able to see this output with the exclusive prime deals on the top and all products at the bottom. So here the point is we have logged in as a prime user, okay? So with this, we are done handling the success view, right? Now let's start handling the failure view. That is, when the API call fails, there's a failure view that we are intending to, okay? Let's handle that, okay? So now, firstly, when will the API call fail? Okay, what are the reasons for it? There could be multiple reasons for it, right? So one of which could be, so sending unauthorized user credentials, okay? So like, let's say the user is a non-prime user, and if you are trying to make the API call, then obviously the API call will fail, right? Similarly, another reason could be not specifying the authorization header. If you don't specify the authorization header, even then the API call will fail. Or if you're making use of a wrong HTTP method, like instead of get, if you have used post or something like that. So even in that scenario, the API call will fail. So there could be multiple reasons of API call failure, right? We are currently focusing on a single reason, that is sending unauthorized user credentials. That is when a non-prime user is logged in and is trying to access the prime deals section, then the API call will be failed because the user is unauthorized, right? So since the user is unauthorized, so if he tries to get the prime deal section, the API call will fail, okay? Clear? So this part is clear, right? So even if you try to make an API call, so you'll get a status code of 401. There you can see, right? Status code 401. So 401 means the user is unauthorized to access the prime deals. Okay, 401. That status code intends unauthorized. Okay, so here you can see the error message also, unauthorized to access the prime deals. Okay, so when a non-prime user tries to access the prime deals section, then the API call will fail and we'll get a 401. Okay, so that means the user is unauthorized. Okay, clear? So now let's try this out. So currently I have logged in as a prime user. So I'll first log out. I'll log in as a non-prime user. So this is one non-prime user that we have. Raja@2021 is the password. Let's log in now. Okay, so now if we try to access the products, so you can see that there's nothing present there. So if you try to inspect, okay, so let's go to the network tab. Okay, let me just refresh. So you can see that here the prime deals has failed. So if you look into it, the status code is 401. And coming to the preview, you can see the error message, unauthorized to access prime deal, status code 401. Because I have logged in as a non-prime user, right? So that's the reason API call failed. And since the API call has failed, so there's nothing to display in the UI. So we don't have any e-thing displayed here, right? Directly it started with all the products. Because you can see that in the render method, if the API call is a success, only then we are displaying, otherwise it's null. So in the UI, there's nothing being displayed. Okay, clear? So we have seen this and we also have looked into this output. But what do we want to achieve? Is this what we want to achieve? No, we want to display a failure view, right? There you can see get exclusive deals. We want to display a poster like this. Okay, so this is what we want to do. Okay, we want to achieve. Let's see how to do that. Okay, so when the API call is a failure, right, that means that if the response.status is 401, we are handling only one particular failure case, that is user unauthorized, right? So in that case, so the response.status will be 401. So when the response.status is 401, so we have to set the API status as a failure. There you can see, right? We have written a constant, so failure, okay, and then so in the set state, we are updating the state as API status state as failure. Okay, so now we have updated the API status. So based on the API status, we have to render the failure view. So that's what we are doing in the render method. So there you can see. So case API status constants dot failure. So if it is a failure, then we are displaying the failure view. There you can see this dot render prime dates failure view. Okay, clear? So with this, we'll get an output in this manner. Okay, let's give this a try. So we understood that. So the API call, we are handling one particular case, that is unauthorized user. So then we'll get a 401. Okay, so based on that, so this is the success case, right? So now we want to handle the failure case. So if the API call is not a success and if the response.status is a 401, okay, in such scenarios, okay, that means that the user is unauthorized. Okay, so then we want to display the failure view. So for that, firstly, we need an API status constant. So failure. Okay. So now here I'm going to update the state, this dot set state, in which I'm going to update the API status as failure. Okay, clear? This part is clear, right? So we have updated the status as failure. Okay, now when it comes to rendering, okay, so if the API call is a failure, then what do we have to do? We have to display the failure view, right? So let's do that. So case, so we are handling the failure case. So in case the API call is a failure, then we have to return this dot render prime deals failure view. Okay, so when the API call is a failure, so the state has been updated, then the render method will be called. So here we are appropriately handling it and displaying the failure view. Now let's have a look at the output. So here you can see, right, since the API call has failed, because the user I have logged in is a non-prime user, so the API call has failed, so we have displayed this UI. Okay, you can even check. I'll just inspect network. Let's just refresh and see. See, the prime deals has failed. So it was a failure. So that's the reason we have the failure view, right? Clear? So we are done with handling the failure view too, right? Okay. So the next thing left is handling the loading view. That is, when the API call is in progress, we want to display the loading view. Okay. So for that, so in the API status constant, I'm going to add another constant which is in progress, right? So the next thing is when the API call is in progress, we have to update the state as in progress, right? So in the get prime deals method, so initially I'm going to set the state as in progress, right? So since I've updated the state, the render method will be called where we are handling the in progress case, right? There you can see. So where we are displaying the loading view, okay? Return this dot render loading view. So with this, when the API call is in progress, we'll be able to see an output in this manner, okay? So let's give this a try. So now we are done with the failure and the success, right? So the one thing that we are left with is in progress, right? So in progress, okay? So now coming to this constant, okay? So when will the API call be in progress? When this particular method will be called, right? So here, let's update the state. This dot set state of API status would be API status constant dot in progress, right? So we have updated the API status, right? So then the set state will be called. Here we have to handle this particular case, right? Constant dot in progress render loading view. Okay, clear? So we have handled the success, failure, and the loading view, right? So here, if you observe what exactly happens. So when the get prime deals will be called, so the API status will be set as in progress. So the loading view will be displayed. So then the API call will be in progress. So once the API call is done, if it's a success, right? So in that scenario, we have updated the API status as success. So the success view will be moved, okay, will be displayed. Now, if the response status is a 401, then we have updated it as a failure. So we'll have a failure view. So appropriately, we have handled all the three views, right? So let's have a look at the output. Okay, so you can see initially there was a loading view and then we have this poster that was coming up. Okay, similarly, so I'll just I'll log in as a prime user. Okay, so Pranita, and then so the password is Pranita @2021. Okay, So I've logged in. So now I'm a Prime user. Okay, so if I access the products, you can see that I got the exclusive Prime deals. If I refresh, you can see the loading view. Since my net speed is really fast, you can see that it's very fastly been updated. Okay, so we are done with handling all the three views and we have seen the output. So we are done with integrating the get exclusive Prime deals API, right? And then we also handle the various views, right? The success, failure and loading view, right? We are just left with few best practices that we need to follow. Let's have a look at them. Okay. So firstly, we have made use of API status. You might be wondering, why didn't we use is loading, which we have done previously? So is loading, okay, which takes Boolean value, either true or false. Okay, so in that scenario, so here we can only maintain the success view or the loading view. Okay, only these two. Okay, whereas using the API status, we were able to handle three different views: success, failure and loading, right? So that's the advantage of making use of API status. So in case of is loading, it's only success and loading. In case of API status, we can handle success, failure and loading views. Okay, so that's the advantage of making use of API status. Generally in the industry, so we have to handle the success, failure, loading, all the cases. So that's the reason we will make use of the API status. Okay. So another best practice is when we are initializing the API status, rather than having an empty string, it's better to initialize it with a constant. Okay, so you can see that we have written initial, a constant in the API status constants, and we have initialized it with that. Okay, this is a best practice because having an empty string doesn't really convey what exactly does it mean. Okay, so but when you see initial, it's clearly evident that we have initialized the API status with this value, right? That's way more readable and clear, right? Whereas when it comes to empty string, it's not that clearly evident. So it's always a best practice to do this. Okay, so let's do that. So as I mentioned, so instead of initializing it with an empty string, because it's not clearly evident. So what does empty string mean? So it's not clearly evident, right? So it's better to have a constant. So in this manner, okay, and initializing with that. Okay, API status constant dot initial. Okay, so this is actually a better practice. So we have seen this, right? And now, so here there's some terminology that I'm going to summarize that we have gone through in the past few sessions. Okay. So firstly, using React, we are building single page applications. So there's always a single page. So in this single page, we'll be having different routes. Like we have the products route, the cart route, right? So these are the different routes present in that single page. So using React, so far we are building single page applications. So there's a single page in which we can have multiple routes. Okay, so there you can see that we have slash products is one route. Okay, similarly cart is another route, like this, right? So we can have different routes in a single page. Okay, clear? So now in a particular route, okay, so we can have different sections. Like in case of the products route, so we have prime deals section, we have all products section. So in a route, we will have different sections. So you understood the hierarchy, it's always a single page. In a single page, we'll have different routes. So in a route, we can have different sections. Okay, clear? So now coming to the prime deals section. So you can see that for the prime deal section, there are different views, right? So when the API call was a success, there's one view. When the API call was a failure, there's one view. When the API call was in progress, we have another view, right? So a section can have different views. So based on different conditions, so we can have different views for a particular section. Okay, clear? So I'll just quickly summarize the hierarchy that we have discussed, the terminology that we have discussed. So we are building single page applications. There's always one page. A page can have multiple routes. A route can have multiple sections. A section can have multiple views. Okay, clear? So this is just a brief overview of the terminology that we were discussing so far. Okay. So we are done with integrating the get products API and also the get exclusive prime deals API. Okay. So let me quickly summarize today's session. In today's session, we have integrated the get exclusive prime deals API. Then we have handled the various views, right? So we have handled the success, failure, and also the... So